The Monday morning meeting was supposed to be the happiest day of Emily Carter's career. For 3 years, she had arrived at the office before anyone else and left long after the lights in neighboring buildings had gone dark. She had sacrificed birthdays, canceled vacations, skipped holidays, and spent countless nights perfecting presentations that helped Westbridge Consulting become one of the fastest growing firms in the city. Everyone knew who solved impossible client problems. Everyone knew who stayed calm when projects fell apart. Everyone knew who quietly carried entire teams without asking for recognition. Emily never complained because she believed one simple promise her manager had repeated for months. Keep doing what you're doing. Promotion season is coming. Those words echoed in her mind as she adjusted the sleeves of her navy blazer and walked into the conference room. Around her, coworkers whispered excitedly while balancing cups of coffee. Some smiled warmly at her, already assuming she would become the company's newest senior project manager. You've got this, Sarah whispered as she passed. You've earned it, another colleague added. Emily smiled politely, though inside she felt a rare wave of excitement. She wasn't chasing a bigger office or a larger paycheck. She wanted proof that the sacrifices had meant something. At precisely 9 o'clock, the glass doors opened. The company's CEO, Daniel Foster, entered with the executive team. Daniel was respected throughout the company. Brilliant, disciplined, and remarkably calm under pressure, he had built the business from a struggling startup into an industry leader. Employees admired him, but very few actually knew him. He rarely showed emotion, and every decision he made seemed calculated. Emily respected him deeply. She believed he noticed hard work. The room fell silent as Daniel stepped to the front. Thank you all for joining us. Today marks an exciting new chapter for Westbridge. A slideshow appeared behind him. Our growth over the last year exceeded every expectation. Polite applause filled the room. We couldn't have achieved this without each of you. Emily sat a little straighter. Then came the announcement everyone had been waiting for. We're pleased to introduce our new senior project manager. Emily felt her heart begin to race. Quote. Michael Reynolds. For a moment, the room became strangely quiet. Then applause slowly started. Emily didn't clap. She couldn't. Michael looked stunned before walking toward the front with a grin so wide it seemed almost rehearsed. Emily stared at him. Michael had joined the company only 8 months earlier. Friendly. Absolutely. Talented. Certainly. More qualified. Not even close. She had trained him. She had corrected his reports. She had covered his mistakes with clients without ever mentioning them. She had even stayed late helping him prepare for meetings because he admitted he felt overwhelmed. Now he was accepting the promotion everyone believed belonged to her. Daniel shook Michael's hand. See, congratulations. Emily looked around the room. Some coworkers avoided eye contact. Others looked genuinely uncomfortable. Sarah's expression said everything. This wasn't expected. This wasn't fair. Emily forced herself to remain still as the meeting continued, though she couldn't hear another word. 3 years. 3 years of loyalty. 3 years of promises. 3 years of believing effort always mattered. When the meeting finally ended, people surrounded Michael to congratulate him. Emily quietly picked up her notebook and walked out. She barely made it to the hallway before Sarah caught up. Emily. Emily smiled. I'm okay. No, you're not. I said I'm okay. You deserved that promotion. Emily looked through the office windows toward the skyline. I guess I misunderstood what this company values. Sarah hesitated. Are you going to talk to Daniel? Emily nodded. I need answers. An hour later, Emily stood outside Daniel Foster's office. His assistant smiled. He's expecting you. She knocked once. Come in. Daniel sat behind a polished walnut desk reviewing documents. Without looking up, he said, please, have a seat. Emily remained standing. I'd rather stand. Now he looked up. His expression remained unreadable. I assume this is about today's announcement. Wasn't it obvious? He folded his hands. You've been one of our strongest employees. One of. Emily. I trained Michael. Yes. I managed our biggest clients. Yes. I worked weekends. Yes. I solved problems that weren't even my responsibility. I know. She took a slow breath. Then why? Daniel remained silent for several seconds. Finally he answered. It was the best decision for the company. Emily blinked. That's it. There are factors you aren't aware of. What factors? I'm not able to discuss executive decisions. So after 3 years, I don't even deserve an explanation. His voice stayed calm. You deserve respect. She laughed bitterly. Respect. If this is respect, I'd hate to see disappointment. Daniel watched her carefully. Emily, emotions are understandable, but I hope you won't make any decisions you'll regret. She stared at him. You really think this is about emotion? He didn't answer. She reached into her bag, pulled out a neatly folded envelope, placed it on his desk. I wrote this last night. Daniel frowned. What is it? My resignation. For the first time since she'd entered, his expression changed. Only slightly. But enough for Emily to notice. You already prepared this. I believed today would change my life. She smiled sadly. I was right. Daniel didn't touch the envelope. You don't have to do this. I already did. She turned toward the door. Emily. She stopped. I genuinely hope you'll reconsider. Without turning around, she replied quietly. For 3 years, I did all the reconsidering. She walked out. The office seemed strangely silent as coworkers watched her return to her desk. Nobody asked questions. Nobody needed to. Within 20 minutes, she packed 3 years of memories into a single cardboard box. A framed photo with her parents, a small cactus that somehow survived despite her long work hours, a notebook filled with ideas that had earned millions for the company, and a ceramic mug Sarah had given her on her first work anniversary. She looked around one last time. This place used to feel like home, she whispered. Then she walked toward the elevators. Just before the doors closed, Sarah hugged her tightly. They're making a huge mistake. Emily smiled through tear-filled eyes. Maybe. No, Sarah replied. Definitely. As the elevator descended, Emily had no idea that upstairs, Daniel Foster was staring at her resignation letter instead of the reports covering his desk. For the first time in years, the unshakable CEO looked deeply unsettled. He pressed the intercom. Cancel my afternoon meetings. All of them, sir. Every single one. He picked up Emily's personnel file, opened it slowly, and whispered something no one else was there to hear. I didn't want it to happen like this. If you're already invested in Emily's journey and want to see what Daniel is hiding, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications. The biggest twist is still ahead, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Emily stepped out of the building into the cool afternoon air, clutching the cardboard box that now contained everything she had taken from 3 years of her professional life. The city buzzed around her as if nothing had happened. Cars honked. Pedestrians hurried past with coffees in hand. Across the street, a street musician played an old jazz tune while people dropped spare change into his guitar case. Everything looked perfectly normal, yet for Emily it felt as though the ground beneath her had disappeared. She looked up at the towering glass building that had once filled her with pride. Every morning she had walked through those revolving doors believing she was building a future. Today, she walked away wondering whether loyalty had ever mattered. Her phone vibrated. Sarah. Please tell me you haven't gone far. Emily sighed. I'm at the park across the street. I'm coming. 5 minutes later Sarah appeared, still wearing her office badge around her neck. She sat beside Emily on a wooden bench overlooking a small fountain. I can't believe you actually resigned. I couldn't stay. You could have fought. Emily shook her head. For what? If 3 years of work wasn't enough to prove myself, another 3 months wouldn't change anything. Sarah looked around before lowering her voice. People are talking. They always do. No. This is different. Even Michael looked uncomfortable. Emily let out a soft laugh. I don't blame him. You don't. He accepted an opportunity. I would have done the same. But he knew. He knew I deserved it. Everyone knew. That doesn't make him responsible. Sarah hesitated. Daniel's been acting strange since you left. Emily looked away. I don't care. But even as she said the words, she knew they weren't entirely true. She cared because she wanted an explanation. Not an apology. Not sympathy. Just the truth. Back inside Westbridge Consulting, silence filled the executive floor. Daniel Foster stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The resignation letter remained open on his desk. His assistant knocked gently. Sir. Yes. Mr. Reynolds is here. Send him in. Michael entered nervously. You wanted to see me. Daniel motioned toward the chair. Sit. Michael obeyed. After a long pause, Daniel asked a surprising question. Do you think you deserve today's promotion? Michael froze. I don't know how to answer that. Answer honestly. Michael swallowed. I think Emily deserved it. Daniel nodded slowly, almost as though he had expected that response. Then why did you accept? Michael looked embarrassed. I've got student loans, my mother's medical bills, this salary changes everything. Daniel's expression softened. I understand. Michael leaned forward. It was just after sunrise when 36-year-old Daniel Carter stood outside the towering glass Daniel looked toward Blackstone Global Industries. Some decisions aren't as simple as they contained his resume, she resigned, a few references, and a janitor job application. Daniel remained silent. His jacket had been stitched together more than once. Were you trying to protect her? Years of wear. Daniel's eyes met his eyes. Instead of answering, yet none of that compared to the weight in his heart. You should focus on becoming the leader this company to clean floors. Michael left more confused than when he had entered. He was simply a father who had promised his 8-year-old just after sunset, that no matter how difficult life became, but it was warm and never go to bed wondering if her dad had stopped fighting for her. Houseplants sat by the windows. That promise had become the reason he woke up every morning. Decorated the hallway. Before we continue, she placed stories about the kitchen table. Unexpected for several minutes, life-changing moments inspire you. Then tears finally came. Subscribe to the channel. Like this video, just silent tears she had been holding back all day. Another unforgettable story. Her mother called it exactly the wrong. Just 2 years earlier, Daniel had lived a completely different life. Sweetheart. Emily wiped her face before construction project manager, earning enough to provide a comfortable home for his wife Emily and their daughter. I quit my job. Their small house was filled with laughter, bedtime stories, I wasn't dreams for the future. Another pause. But life can change in a single afternoon. I don't want. Emily was killed in a tragic highway accident while driving the job description. Emily laughed for the first time all day. Grief consumed an hour later, she sat Lily became his only reason at the same dining table where she had done homework. As if losing his wife wasn't enough, her father listened quietly while he worked went bankrupt during an economic downturn. Finished, he folded his hands. He lost his income, his health insurance, and eventually when I lost my first management position, followed another until everything they had built disappeared. You never told me that. Daniel refused to give up. What happened? Took temporary jobs unloading trucks, me to find washing dishes, better, mowing lawns, and delivering packages. I don't feel like this is better. Every dollar he earned went toward food. He reached across the table. A tiny apartment, but one closed door has a funny habit of pushing us toward the right one. Many nights he skipped dinner so she could have a full meal. Still, Lily noticed his calm voice eased the ache in her chest. Sometimes she quietly divided her sandwich in half and remained in his office long after everyone else had gone home. Daniel always smiled, pretending he had already eaten, while silently praying that tomorrow would be kinder. He slowly flipped through confidential documents. Daniel tucked Lily into bed after reading her favorite leadership assessments. She wrapped her small arms around his neck and whispered, "Daddy, a recommendation letter. I'm going to buy you a big house because you always take care of me." Something far bigger than anyone in the company knew. He didn't want her to whispered to himself, that simple promise from his little girl became his greatest source of strength. His phone rang. The next morning, the caller ID displayed a name that immediately changed the public library. Daniel noticed an opening at Blackstone Global Industries. A woman's voice came through the speaker. The position was she resigned. Overnight janitor. Then it's no time. College degree Daniel required. Closed his eyes. Stable income. I hope she forgives benefits after his 90 days. Tightened around the phone as the call ended. It was just another cleaning job. Emily stood on the balcony of her apartment looking at the city lights, ironed his unaware that her resignation had set events into motion that would change both her life and Daniel until they reflected a faint shine. She believed she had been forgotten. Lily handed him a tiny folded piece of paper. The next morning, Emily opened it until sunrise out of habit. She said with a smile. Quiet seconds, Daniel forgot everything that had happened the previous forehead before heading out. Then her eyes landed on the cardboard box sitting beside the dining table. Daniel had reality came rushing back. The lobby gleamed with polished marble had an office to towering glass calendar full of sparkling chandeliers, and employees dressed in expensive suits. Instead of feeling relieved, as he approached the reception desk, several people glanced at his stood by the window watching the city come alive. Daniel ignored the stairs. Were heading to jobs they probably complained about. His daughter mattered more than appearances. She had just walked away from the career she had spent him politely and directed him to the human resources department on the 12th floor. Subject: Thank you for your contributions. Daniel watched dozens of applicants arrive for executive confirming receipt of her resignation. They carried designer 3 years of dedication reduced to a few polite portfolios. Emily smiled bitterly quietly closing the message, holding his another notification appeared moments later. He reminded himself that honest work was honorable. Harrison no matter what title came with it. They had somehow received her resume through a professional recruiter and wanted to schedule an interview that warmly and began reviewing his application. She stared at the screen. She noticed years of management experience and looked surprised. Before she could think further, another email arrived. Overqualified for this position. By noon, are you sure you want to apply as a janitor? Requests from 4 respected companies. Gently. A father
Someone
can't
had
feed
his
clearly
daughter with
noticed her work.
qualifications alone.
Right now,
across
I just
town,
need an honest
Daniel
job.
Foster stood
Megan
in another
lowered her
executive
eyes,
board
visibly
meeting,
moved
but his
by his
attention
answer.
wasn't on the
She
financial
continued
reports
reading until
projected
she
across
reached the
conference
emergency
room.
contact section,
Daniel,
where only
one
one
of the
name
board
appeared.
members cleared
Lily
his
Carter,
throat.
daughter.
Your thoughts?
There was
Daniel
no
looked
spouse
up.
listed.
I agree.
No parents.
You don't even know
no
what
siblings.
we're discussing.
Just his
The
little
room
girl.
chuckled. Something
Something
unlike
about that
him.
detail
Daniel
lingered
was
in her
always
thoughts.
prepared.
Meanwhile,
Always focused.
on the top floor
Today,
of the same
however,
building,
billionaire
his thoughts remained
CEO
on one
Victoria
person.
Blackstone
Emily
prepared
Carter.
for another endless
After the
day of
meeting,
meetings.
he walked directly
Known
to human
throughout
resources.
the business world for
I
her
need Emily
intelligence,
Carter's
discipline,
forwarding
and
contact
extraordinary
information.
success.
The
Victoria
HR director
had built
looked
Blackstone
surprised.
Global into one of
Company
the country's
policy
largest
doesn't allow us to
corporations.
release former
Yet
employees'
behind
private
her
information.
success was a
Daniel
loneliness few
nodded.
people
I
understood.
know.
Years earlier,
all
a
respect
painful
the policy.
misunderstanding had
He
torn her
turned to
family
leave before
apart,
stopping at
leaving
the
wounds
doorway.
that never truly
But if
healed.
she contacts the
Since
company,
then,
let me
she
know
had buried
immediately.
herself in work, convincing herself
Meanwhile,
that success
Michael
could
Reynolds
silence regret.
struggled
Through his first
It
day
never
as senior
did.
project
As HR
manager,
processed applications,
within hours,
company
clients
policy
began
required
asking
search
questions
files
Emily
to
would
receive
normally
executive
answer without
approval
hesitation.
because of an internal hiring
One
initiative.
project timeline collapsed.
Daniel Carter's
Another
application
client requested to be
revisions.
included in the
By
day's
late
digital
afternoon,
review. Michael rubbed his
Victoria
forehead in
casually
frustration.
opened the file
He
while
finally
sipping her
admitted what
coffee.
everyone else
She
already
expected
knew.
another routine
Emily
approval.
hadn't simply
Then
done her
she
own
read
job.
one line.
She had
Applicant
quietly been
name,
doing parts
Daniel
of everyone
Carter.
else's.
The coffee cup
Sarah
slipped
entered
from her
his
hand and
office
carrying
carrying a
across
thick
the
stack of
polished
files.
floor.
You asked
Her
for
face
these.
turned pale.
Michael
Her
sighed.
breathing
How
became
did Emily
uneven.
keep track
She
of
stared
all
at the
this?
name as though it
Sarah
had reached out
smiled
from the past
sadly.
itself.
She didn't just keep track.
She
What do
whispered.
you mean?
It can't
She
be.
remembered
Every
memory
client's
she had spent
preferences,
20
every
years trying
deadline,
to forget
every
came
detail.
rushing back
Michael
in an
looked
instant.
around the office.
Victoria Blackstone remained
anyone
frozen,
realized
her eyes
how
fixed
much
on
she
the
actually
application.
handled.
Sarah
name
looked
Daniel
directly
Carter
at him.
echoed in her
One
mind like a
person
forgotten
did.
melody
The
she had
CEO.
tried to silence for
nodded.
decades.
Then why?
I
She
don't
pressed
know.
the intercom with trembling fingers.
That evening,
Emily
Sarah,
attended her
cancel my
first
next
interview.
meeting.
She
But
expected
the
stiff
investors.
questions and formal
Cancel
introductions.
them.
The firmness in her
Instead,
voice
the
left no
company's
room
managing
for argument.
director greeted her
Moments
warmly.
later,
Victoria
we've heard
remarkable
inside
things
the
about you.
executive security
Emily
room.
blinked.
A wall
You
of
have.
monitors
Several
displayed every
industry
corner
leaders
of the building.
recommended your work.
She asked the
She
technician
frowned.
to pull
I
up
wasn't
camera
aware
12.
anyone
The
had.
human resources
The interviewer
waiting area.
smiled.
Sometimes the
She
strongest
whispered.
reputations
The
travel
technician
quietly.
zoomed in.
A
The
tired
interview
man
felt
sat
less like
quietly
an
with his hands
interrogation
folded
and more
together.
like a conversation.
His jacket was faded,
As she
and the
walked
soles
out,
of his
the
shoes were
director
worn
shook her
thin.
hand.
I
Every
hope you'll be
few
speaking
seconds,
again very
he looked
soon.
at a small
For the
photograph
first time
tucked
since
inside his
resigning,
wallet before
Emily
slipping
felt
it back
hopeful.
carefully,
Maybe
as though
losing
it were the
one
most
opportunity
valuable
had
thing
opened
he owned.
another. She had no
Victoria
idea
felt
someone
tears
else
gathering
was
in her
quietly
eyes.
making sure
It
that
really
happened.
is him.
20
Later
years
that night,
earlier,
Daniel
unlocked
had been
this only
only
confidential
16,
drawer
a
once
quiet,
more.
respectful teenager
Inside
who
was
had
a
spent
sealed one unforgettable
recommendations
summer
portfolio.
working at
Every
Victoria's
interview
family's
invitation
countryside
Emily
estate.
had received could be
Back
traced
then,
back to one
Victoria
anonymous
had been a
reference.
lonely university
His.
student
He
who
had
often
spent
escaped
months
the pressure of
introducing
her
her
wealthy
wealthy
family by
trusted
wandering the
executives across
gardens.
the industry without
She
ever
and
telling
Daniel
her.
had become unlikely
Not because
friends
he
despite
wanted her
the
gone.
difference in their
Because he believed her
backgrounds.
talent
They
had
spent
outgrown his
afternoons
company.
talking about
But
dreams,
now,
watching
books,
her
and the
leave in
future.
pain instead of pride.
Then one
He wondered if his
afternoon,
plan
a
had
priceless
become his
diamond
greatest
necklace
mistake.
belonging to Victoria's mother
Looking at her
disappeared.
resignation letter again,
Without
he
evidence,
whispered,
suspicion
I wanted to
immediately
help you
fell
fly,
on the young
not make you
groundskeeper's
believe
son.
you weren't valued. Daniel insisted he was
Outside
innocent.
his office
No
window,
one believed
the city
him.
lights shimmered
Victoria
beneath the
wanted
night
to
sky.
defend him, but
Fear of
somewhere in that
disappointing
city,
her
powerful
Emily was
parents
beginning
kept
a
her
new
silent.
chapter of her life.
Daniel was dismissed
And for the
in
first
disgrace.
time in years,
A week
Daniel
later,
Foster
the necklace
wasn't
was
chasing
found
a
inside a
business deal.
storage cabinet
He
where
was
it had
chasing the
accidentally
chance
been
to explain
misplaced.
the truth before it
By
was
then,
too late.
Daniel and his
If you're
family had
enjoying
already
this
left
emotional
town.
journey,
Victoria
don't forget
never
to like
forgave
this
herself
video,
for staying
subscribe
silent.
to the channel,
She
and
had
turn on
searched for him for years
notifications.
but eventually
The
accepted
biggest
she would
secrets
never
are
have
about
the
to be
chance to
revealed,
apologize.
and you won't
want to miss what
Now,
happens next.
after
2 decades, he was sitting downstairs, applying for a janitor's position in her company. She quietly entered the observation room beside human resources, separated by one-way glass. Daniel couldn't see her. She watched as Megan returned with a cup of coffee. I'm sorry for the wait. Daniel smiled warmly. No problem. Thank you. His
kindness hadn't changed. Just then, Daniel remembered Lily's note. He unfolded the tiny piece of paper. Written in colorful crayons were the words, "Daddy, I already know you're my hero. Good luck today. Love, Lily." Daniel smiled through misty eyes. Victoria covered her mouth. She had negotiated billion-dollar contracts without emotion. Yet a child's handwritten note broke her composure completely. For the first time in years, she cried openly. As Daniel carefully folded the note and returned it to his pocket, Megan asked quietly, "Can I ask you something personal?" Daniel nodded. "Why haven't you given up?" He looked toward the window where sunlight reflected from the city skyline. Because every evening, one little girl runs into my arms believing I can fix anything. I can't let her discover that heroes quit. Those words struck everyone in the room. Even employees outside the office stopped working for a moment. Victoria whispered to herself, he's still the same man, only stronger. She made a decision. Not because she pitied him. Not because she felt guilty. But because she finally had the opportunity to correct the greatest mistake of her life. She picked up the phone. Prepare conference room A. Invite Mr. Daniel Carter personally. And tell everyone. I'll be conducting this interview myself. Neither Daniel nor the staff had any idea that the next few minutes would uncover a secret buried for 20 years, one that would change both of their lives forever.